All right, everyone, good morning. Welcome to the Lookout. Today is the 12th of August, and my name is Zeke Lunder. We run the Lookout website. We do user-supported fire intel, wildfire reporting, talk about prescribed fire, talk about fire science. And today we're going to just take a look at what's happening on the Six Rivers Lightning Complex over by Willow Creek on Trinity River. So thanks for tuning in. And we're going to jump right into maps here. So the Lightning Complex is broken up into two zones or two branches. We got the north branch, which is everything north of the Trinity River, and the south branch, which is everything that's south of the Trinity River. North branch has got the Waterman fire, the Bremer fire, and the Campbell fire. So we're going to start in Bremer and kind of work our way around, looking in here over Willow Creek. These maps are from infrared flights that were taken last night, night of the 11th. And what we do each day is we take those maps and we throw the perimeter from the flight from the night before last on as a white line. So the white line shows your fire spread. And in these maps, the red fill is the intense heat. Yellow fill is areas that are cooling off. And then if there's no fill, it's pretty cold. And you see like these little scattered dots. Wait, what's happening? Turn on my little fancy cursor thing here if I can. Whoa, come back. Full screen. How do I see the full screen? All right, sorry about that. All right. Hope that was worth it. Okay, so what we see here is the fire's been backing down the hill. They did some firing here that's cooling off. There's some dozer lines put in here behind the community, and all good there. Fire continues to flank. And when we say flank, we mean move side hill. The fire's flanking here down into Bremer Creek. It's also flanking, this is the Campbell fire, flanking towards the north, and this is kind of up this way. So it looks like these fires are probably going to grow together. So coming around Bremer here, some intense heat here as it's flanking to the north along the road, but still not showing anything over the road here. And now we're looking up Coon Creek at the Waterman fire on Waterman Ridge. Big story on this part of the fire was just that they, night before last, they did some firing out around the head of Coon Creek watershed, trying to keep up with the flank of the fire up the canyon. The fire has moved a bit up the canyon, we can see here, and it's also moved a bit down, and they're firing along the edge here, along the road, to keep up with the flanking. So that's just going to continue. They'll just continue to fire down the road as the fire flanks down. Early on in this incident, they really pounded the lower parts of this with heavy helicopters, but we've had smoke laying in really heavily every night. And then in the morning, often not lifting until 2 or 3 in the afternoon, if it lifts at all. The forecast is for that to keep happening. The inversion is supposed to stay heavy. And every day we pack more smoke into this equation. So the forecast for today is for the inversion to stay pretty intense, and then it may lift after 2 but they don't expect it to just completely break and clear out, which is good news because the inversion, all that smoke layering in, it kind of deprives the fire of an ability to breathe. Waterman continues to back down on the north side, down into the next drainage here to the north, which is Cedar Creek. But really, there hasn't been a lot of spread here on the firing. You can see the white line showing where it was 24 hours before this mapping. It's just barely moved downhill. And actually, one of the problems we have sometimes with fighting fire in the Klamath and in the Trinity and in these deep canyons is just that the conditions with the inversion get so kind of thick that you can't even barely get your firing operation to carry sometimes. So not a lot of depth happening there, but and they haven't really carried it much back this way. I think it's likely that the fire is going to come up out of Bremer Creek at some point, and so they don't want to get too far ahead here of the fire. It doesn't serve a lot of control purpose for them to come much farther back on this one because we've got all this fire down below. But the plan is to continue work along this ridgetop road and tie into this firing. So that wraps up Waterman and Bremer. Now we're going to come over to Campbell Fire. Just kind of get into a view here that is understandable. So here we're looking from Willow Creek to Trinity Village. The fire backing down here towards the highway between Willow Creek and Salyer really hasn't moved now for almost a week once it hit the road on the bottom here. Fire continues to be active on the edges, and we've kind of just been watching that and talking about it. It's stayed cold here all through the area north of Salyer. The firing that got done here behind the neighborhoods hasn't really moved anymore. The big news here is just that once it crossed Quimby Creek, it's kind of opened up this new front in the battle, and also the fire continues to kind of slowly move uphill. The weather forecasters are talking a bit about a thermal belt. Thermal belt is just kind of an area where the cold air sinks down at night and warm air is kind of buoyant atop that, and so you can have areas on the kind of mid slopes of these canyons that have that are drier and warmer than the areas below. And the thing with those is just that the fire activity is increased in the thermal belt, and if you think of a fire kind of cooking along under the smoke, it's kind of like your barbecue. If you got a bunch of wood on there and you put the lid on and it stops, it just gets all smoky. When you take the lid off, then when that smoke clears out, your barbecue can really flare up. So if the inversion does lift, the areas in the thermal belt on the mid slope are kind of more primed to be receptive to all that extra oxygen that comes in when the inversion lifts. So if you think, we talk about the inversion in this country, all the smoke laying in the canyon, when that lifts, we call that kind of the lid coming off the pot. Anyway, in the forecast, that's not supposed to happen for a few days. We're under this high pressure system. The smoke's just built in there, and there's no real forecast for a major change in that. Looks like probably through Monday. So what that allows then is for the firefighters to do some pretty aggressive things, like go light the middle of the slope, like on this mid-slope road, in an area that faces down canyon where it could get winds. It's just that we're under such moderate conditions right now that they're trying to get this road fired and build enough depth that it's secure. So then if we do have a change in conditions, we've got a deep enough buffer here to prevent the fire that's down here from running up and jumping the road. And oftentimes we say it's really hard to fight fire on mid-slope roads, but right now the inversion's really, the smoke packing in and everything is moderating the fire behavior enough. So the Ziegler Point Road, the mid-slope firing so far is held. The infrared last night shows some slop over, some spots. Basically, they've taken the firing down the road, and then they've turned and they're bringing firing. Sorry, drive this thing. bringing firing down this ridge as well. So there's a dozer line on this ridge. They've been firing off of it. They've got some spots over it as of last night. Not showing in the mapping as a whole bunch of intense heat, but still fire established on this ridge. And so today it'll be interesting to see, is this line lost, or are they going to pick this up? It's not likely that they're going to have helicopters available to pick this up anytime soon. This tends to be one of the smokier parts of the fire because all the smoke that packs in, when it starts to lift out in the afternoon, we also have the up canyon winds carrying the smoke this direction. So that's kind of one of the kind of factors in play right now is, I don't have much intel on this except that it showed up on an infrared scan. So something to watch is that fire established there. So that wraps up the Campbell for now. So now we're going to jump over to the South Branch and look at Ammon fire. The Ammon and Oak have merged now. They kind of did a dance for a few days and reached out towards each other, and now they're solidly one unit. In past days, we've seen kind of spread in every direction on the Ammon fire. Right now, like as of last night, we're seeing kind of the least amount of spread along the edges on Ammon Oak that we have really up till now. Yesterday there was a lot more growth kind of in every direction. So there's some spread, a little bit of spread here, kind of lower Madden Creek. We're looking to the east here. And yesterday I think I didn't really give a great orientation to where these fires are compared to civilization. But if we're looking kind of northwest, here's Willow Creek and the highway, and here's the South Fork Trinity River. Then up here is kind of the Berry Summit and the main ridge that comes south off of Berry Summit. So on Ammon, there's dozer line punched up this flank. Some of it's pretty direct, some of it's indirect, and so far the fire hasn't crossed any of that. There's been firing going on here at the kind of upper end of the south flank of Ammon. That's just kind of been steadily moving up the slope along dozer line. And that's, like we've talked about in other places, that's kind of to keep a pace with the fire that's downhill. You don't want this fire to like make a run and hit a chunk of line that you haven't fired yet. But it looks like they're being pretty conservative with their firing, and that's just kind of, you don't want to rush. They don't want to get out here and have a whole bunch of fire on the ground that they have to hold before they have to. So, like we said before, it's been interesting to see kind of how slowly this fire's actually moving when you look at the fact that it's got so much slope above it and contiguous fuels. It's really just, here's one of the longer runs in the last 24 hours. But here, it's really not moving that far. Some places out here, it's barely moving at all. As we talked about, there's a lot of retardant now applied on this ridge and a lot of retardant applied along the top of the mountain. And it's kind of just a waiting game here. The winds are generally out of the west or southwest here, and that's favorable as far as embers from, when you do have runs here, the embers are kind of tending to get lofted back into the fire. So we're not seeing, long range spotting out here like we would see if you had these runs that are being driven by an east wind that could also loft embers out ahead. They're definitely, they've been concerned for days now about the slop over here on Friday Ridge Road, and it still has been really minimal growth out in that area. There's a little finger here that looks like it's probably fired on the road, but here this hasn't moved for about 2 days. There's just little bits of growth out here on this slop over, but it's pretty hasn't been moving much. The fire is backing down here into Madden Creek. The oak fire kind of, looking at the infrared, is pretty much like, it's really pretty cold, most of this whole oak area. Fire back down into here, and, a lot of this is kind of scrubby, and either the fire underburned here or just there wasn't, once the initial fuel was burned, there wasn't a lot to burn. Anyway, as this fire backs down into here, there is some potential to get slope reversal if the fire behavior picks up. Right now, the fires have kind of been holding on creeks and riparian areas. So we'll see what happens with this kind of closing in, if it does run and kind of push Friday Ridge. Friday Ridge has been prepped. I think they're definitely hoping that they don't have to deal with the fire getting up there, but I'm not really informed on the tactics that they're choosing there. Here's the ops map of what we're just looking at. The Berry Summit Mad River Road, where there's all the retardant along here. The dozer line that's being fired on the south flank, that's direct in some places, indirect in others, but with no fire across it. Prep on Friday Ridge Road, and right now there's not really showing any dozer line or hand line or anything down into here to as far as what's going to happen on this particular flank. If we come to the north end of what we were calling the Oak Fire before, there's hand line, dozer line on the other side of the creek, coming down through here, and then some planned hand line. As we've mentioned before, as you come up to the kind of area between Willow Creek, the highway, and these fires, we've got the Knob Fire, which happened last year, and that creates kind of a nice buffer between this fire and civilization. There's some civilization out here. Don't know any of the folks, so I can't tell you how civilized they actually are, but not a lot of movement there. Just to come back over here real quick to this action, I just wanted to jump back to the ops map for that. Here's the dozer line we were talking about that comes down that ridge. They're showing a planned firing operation off that to kind of tie it in. They started on that the other day. There's dozer line out through here to catch the slop, but we do have these spots that are over that secondary kind of spur road, showing the prepped road and the firing, and showing a dozer line in place out here. So let's just come back to this real quick and orient ourselves. Okay, so to translate, there's dozer line down this ridge. They're planning to bring fire down it to keep pace with this. There's dozer line out through here, but these spots are over it. This road is prepped, and there's dozer line down this ridge, down towards the 402 road. So that wraps up our Six Rivers briefing. Actually, I hate to call it a briefing because it makes it sound like it's official. This is not official fire information. This is just us interpreting intel. So that concludes your video update. Thanks for watching us, and we are supported by your donations. So if you do like this stuff and it's helpful, consider going to the Lookout website, the-lookout.org, and making us a little subscription maybe. But no pressure. Hope everyone's doing all right out there. If you're evacuated, hope you get to go home soon. These things drag out for a long time. The good news is that so far we've been really blessed that the fires have stayed out of, all the hard work that's been done has kept the fires out of people's houses, and looks like the weather's going to continue to give us a hand here, at least through the weekend. So we'll keep doing these, and hopefully things just keep unfolding slowly, and the good news keeps coming. Thanks, everyone.